morning, folks. So thank you all so much for joining us this morning. My name is Claire Conran. I'm the interim head of design and innovation at the Adapt Centre. I lead the design and innovation lab. We connect Adapt's research expertise with industry by collaborating with them on short-term rapid prototyping projects, or by partnering with them to tackle larger scale projects. And we are open for business, so feel free to reach out to us if you have any ideas or sort of problem areas that you think we might be able to help you with. I'm delighted to welcome you to the third webinar in our Creating Tomorrow's World series. Today we will be focusing on the university innovation ecosystem, and in particular startups. We have three speakers who will take us through the full innovation lifecycle from concept to deployment. First up, we have Conor McNally. Conor is Adapt's business and startup manager. He works within our commercialization team and manages the startup pipeline. This currently consists of 16 funded teams that collectively have secured over €5 million in commercialization funding and has created over 50 jobs. Conor is an entrepreneurial mentor for these startup teams. He works with them on their entire journey from concept development, business validation, funding applications, project execution, becoming investor ready, and then finally spinning out of the university. In addition to this work, he also works with our industry partners to help define problem statements and shaping our engagements with them. Then we will hear from Neil Gordon, Startup and Development Manager at Trinity College, Dublin. Neil has a focus on the creation of new companies and high potential startups from within Trinity's research community. His role is front of house and includes interfacing with staff and students who are establishing new companies with entrepreneurs, business partners, angel investors, venture capitalists, and enterprise agencies. He works closely with other Trinity entrepreneurship functions such as our business school and Tangent. And then finally is Eamon Donlyn. Eamon is the commercial lead for Darwin and Goliath, a Trinity College spinout based in Adapt. Darwin and Goliath enable companies to improve product recommendations and engage customers creatively around the reduction of carbon emissions. He is a two-time Emmy Award winner with a career spanning 19 years across media, technology and venture capital in Silicon Valley, London and Dublin. He has founded multiple startups and a think tank. We'll take questions in the Q&A facility and can address these at the end of the three presentations. So without further ado, I will hand over to Conor.
Thank you very much, Claire. Just share my screen here. So hopefully you can see that. So as Claire said, I'm the Business and Startup Development Manager at Adapt Centre. And this is a quick intro to Adapt. Adapt is a world-leading centre of excellence for AI and digital media technologies. And we've over 300 research experts across 8 of the universities in Ireland. And I guess our mission is really around multidisciplinary research, and to do that in collaboration with industry in a way that has impact both economically for businesses and for society. And we do this through two means. It's primarily through industry projects. We've worked with 30 leading brands, and most of the big tech or multinational companies you can think of in Ireland we've done projects with. We've done over 54 projects, and that has resulted in 60 IP licenses going out to industry. So a lot of value is being created, a lot of IP that those industries can use. But it's also through startup projects, and we have a very active startup pipeline, which I lead. And at the moment, we've got 17 funded projects with over 6 million in funding. And we've got numerous other ideas that are incubating and seeking to get funded as well. And in addition to that, to date, we've had 6 spin-outs that have been through this process that have successfully spun out and raised investment and gone on to do great things. So I guess our secret sauce is really this multidisciplinary approach about bringing experts into one team. So while we are the AI and digital media technologies, we will collaborate with the School of Medicine, pharmacy, sociology, psychology, engineering, wherever is required to make the ideal team to solve a particular challenge. We bring that team together to innovate. And a lot of what we do is around, for both industry projects and for startups, is about really replacing or enhancing human tasks or interactions. So all of these things, learn, read, listen, speak, translate, see, they're on at the center of all the knowledge and the understanding of this. These are all key components in every business workflow, in every customer journey. And there's so much space for innovation when you think of things in these terms. So for some examples, so in terms of learning and machine learning, Darwin and Goliath, who Eamon is the commercial lead on, who you're going to hear from in a few minutes, they can learn what products customers want and be able to recommend the things that they're really interested in. Same with M-Pushy, they learn what is the best time of day to contact a customer, what kind of content that customer is interested in. So when you send notifications to them, they're much more likely to value that notification and open it. In terms of reading and search, there's massive opportunities in this space. And you think of everything that goes on with medical documents, patent documents, legal documents, there's so much opportunity in this space. Two startups are examples of that. Biologic, that's just about to spin out, can search medical or pharmaceutical documents around adverse events that may have happened to a pharmaceutical drug. So currently that's a massive manual task, and they can automate it. Caliber can search, it's for publishers, so that they can scan what's about to get published to make sure there may be that there might not be any content in there that could cause offense or be toxic or could cause a libel action. So again, it's about reading those documents and providing a safety net to publishers. In terms of listening, speaking, translating, there's a lot of opportunity here. Mila is a language tutor that can listen to speakers. It can speak back to them. It can translate. In a language lab environment, we have VoiceTune, which is a text-to-speech synthesizer. So it can create really realistic human voices. You wouldn't be able to tell that it's a machine. And it can also produce voices that have got emotion in them. So this is technology for, say, the animation industry or for the gaming industry, so that they can have a voice lab and have much more flexibility in how they create the voice for their productions. And then in terms of translating, Canton MT is a spin out from Adapt that has gone on to do great things and was recently acquired. And they can enable you to translate all your content into all the languages that you need. In terms of seeing and computer vision, there's a lot of activity in this space as well. So Move Ahead wants to enable kids to use their bodies to control games, so to get off the couch and to move, so they can look at the body shape and turn that into control actions for games. Size looks at your body shape and tells you what clothes will fit you and to be your fashion assistant, which is a massive, the whole area of returns and wrong size is a massive problem for the online fashion. And anything that can recommend the right clothes or improve conversion rates is a massive bonus. Arama is a project that wants to reduce the cost of broadcast of football games, so that it can put a stationary camera setup to a stadium, and it can track the game and broadcast the game as if it was human operators there doing it. And at the center of it all, there's the knowledge and the data that drives all of this. So when you think of it in those terms, there's just so much opportunity and things that are going on. And most of these innovations, they enable capabilities that, it's about automation, it's about removing those manual tasks, it's about interaction, it's about being able to interact with your customers in new and better ways, it's about looking at your customer journey and fixing the bottlenecks or problems that are potentially there. And then it's about leveraging your information and your data in the best possible way to extract value from it. So then just ask the question, so where do all these ideas start? How do they get off the ground? I guess it comes from these three areas, from a customer need, from a business impact or a KPI that you're trying to move, or it can also come from the underlying capabilities or technology. Typically, it will come from an industry partner coming to us with a defined problem statement that they see with their customer experience or business impact they're looking for, and also with entrepreneurs who come to us with ideas. But it can also be the other way. So sometimes industry partners come to us and say, "What is the state of the art? What is going on in this space?" And we can feed back to them, what are the opportunities, what are the capabilities, because you need to know what is the art of the possible to be able to innovate. So this is really a virtuous circle. It can start either up at the customer level, or it can start below by understanding what are the capabilities. And sometimes to flesh this out, we use what we call discovery workshops. So the problem statements could be quite broad. There may be an idea that there's an opportunity in this space, and we would start with that, and we would have the right researchers in the room. We'd have the commercial or business people in the room. We would have kind of more innovation people in the room, just to bring it all together. And it's really about iterating around a problem statement. And when you do that in a workshop environment, typically you will narrow the scope of it. You can prioritize it so that you'll have quite defined problem statements. You will have a good idea of what are the dials you're trying to move, what are the KPIs that can be improved with this, and we'll have a very practical research roadmap to make it happen, to get to a proof of concept. And it's the same for the startup process. So typically startups come from two places. They'll come from entrepreneurs with an idea that will come to us and say, "Look, we have this idea, but we need technology to make it reality." And typically the requirement from them in order to get into the university environment is that they do need to do their own business validation, and they need to get industry engaged. And it's just an important point to say is that you do not need a prototype. You do not need technology to go out and talk to industry. Industry can get excited around the problem that you're solving. So for example, that project Arama, which is being led by Donald Scannell, Donald came to me and said, "Look, I want to reduce the cost of broadcasting football. In the League of Ireland only broadcast 30 games a year, where it could be the full 200 for the same cost. If I could find a way of put a stationary setup in the stadium and automate the broadcast of it." He went to the broadcasters, he talked this through. They were extremely excited about it, by the business case for it, and they agreed to be trial partners for it. So when you have that backup, then we can go to researchers and say, "Look, this is a great idea. We've got buy-in." And Professor Anil Kokkaram in computer vision said, "Yes, this is possible." And we put together an achievable research roadmap to be able to do that. And with those three things, with business case that's validated, you've got good trial partners that are engaged, and you've got an achievable research roadmap. If you have those three things, you can typically get your projects funded. So that is the key goal, is to get those three things in line, to get your ducks in a row on those. And when that happens, you can get funded. It's the same when you go the other way. Startups can come from internal ideas from researchers within the universities. And typically with those ideas, they may have a hypothesis on the use case for it. They may not have the business validation for it yet, but they will have an idea of where it could be used. And you can, Enterprise Ireland have a feasibility study to help with this. So you can engage a commercial consultant to go out to the market, and they will talk to the market and try to find out where the opportunities for this are, to get, a validated business case and engage trial partners. So an example of this would be a project that's recently got funded that's about to start called UniCook. So the underlying technology can convert textual instructions like a DIY manual or a recipe in from text into something very visual with images where you could go next step, next step, next step, and can do that automatically. And you think of the amount of content out there that is text-based, this could, reuse that in a much more visual way. So we went out and talked to the market on that. And it turns out that within supermarkets, there's a massive push around shoppable recipes. A recipe-driven shopping basket will have more items added and will have greater spend. In addition, some of the image companies want to much more leverage of their images and use them in more and innovative ways. So we got great buy-in for this idea and got excellent industry partners engaged as trial partners. And because of that, this became fundable for the same reasons. So startups can get started from different ways, from external ideas and also internally. The fund I mentioned is called the EI Commercialization Fund. It's up to 350K in grant funding. And the length of time it takes to get your ducks in a row and those three things I talked about, it just varies. For the likes of Arama, it was very quick. For others, it can take time, and some projects it can be 6 months to a year before it all falls into place. But to get that level of funding within that time frame is an amazing opportunity. It is just to say that this is grant funding. You're not a startup or a legal entity yet. When you go this route, you're a team within a university. This fund is ring fenced for that team, and your goal is, to commercialize research, to run trials with industry, and then you can spin out. So it is an important distinction, and also that the university owns the IP. When you spin out, then you get an exclusive license to that IP at the point of spin out. So it is a different model to the usual startup route. Again, the key stakeholders in this are the Enterprise Ireland have an excellent commercialization team that we work very closely with, that have, the backs of these entrepreneurs and researchers who want to make these things happen. Everyone is helping him to make it happen. It's the same with the university transfer, technology transfer offices. And again, the person who applies to these funds is usually a professor or PI, and their engagement in the project can vary from they're fully hands-on to they're giving more oversight, but it is a professor that needs to apply for this fund. So these are kind of the key stakeholders, and as part of my job is to bring all of this together and get everybody pushing to make the project happen. The key goal of all of these is to get to trials with industry partners. That's what's going to make it, that's what's going to validate it. That's what's going to prove whether it has an impact or moves the KPIs. That's what will turn those trial partners into customers, and ultimately that's what makes it investable. In order to get to that, you really have to think of your service as kind of a full stack, starting from the customer layer at the top to the business impact you're trying to achieve, down through the layers, front end API, your back end, and then the underlying AI engine or technology capabilities. It's important to say that the top two layers are the most important. They should be driving all activity in the things below, not the other way around. And just because your AI engine isn't working yet doesn't mean that you can't be working on all the layers above. Having a deep understanding of your customer, their requirements, how you're going to integrate with them, all of these issues is so important. And that's a key part of this fund and this approach to innovation, is that it's really innovation in tandem with trial partners. It's constant iterations with them to understand requirements and to drive the innovation forward. And when you take that approach, your technology stack is going to be far more prioritized. You're going to be far more focused on what is that customer need, or what are those business impacts at the top that you're trying to achieve. And to do this, you do need a good team. It needs to be a cross-functional team, of business people, design people, front and back ends, technology, and bringing all that together with this, laser focus on being customer driven. And just to say that you're much better off being on the left here of, being really engaged with your partners and having a defined customer experience where your tech is still in progress, than have amazing tech on these bottom layers and you're still kind of guessing what your customers want. You don't want to be there, because that is not investable, and you're taking a massive risk around whether customers will actually want what you build. So just to summarize, we support startups from concept to spin out, through that early stage of the concept development, getting the business case right, getting the right trial partners, through that whole funding application process. We support that, and then once the projects are funded, the hiring of it, having the right team is absolutely crucial. Then the whole approach, the execution of the project around those things we just discussed, around being customer and design led, lean UX and agile approaches, and the whole goal is to get to those trials. And as those trials start to look good, as the trial partners start to say, wow, this is impressive, or you can improve your KPIs, then you start to move into the investor ready mode, and you have to get your business plan right. You have to get yourself investor ready so that you can fundraise to become a spin out. And at that stage, my colleague Neil Gordon really takes over and helps teams to become investor ready and makes those intros to the investment community. So Neil's going to take over next. So thank you. For anyone who wants to contact me, there's my email address. Please feel free to reach out. And thanks again.
Great. Thanks a million, Conor. I think that really demonstrated the diversity of opportunity for innovation within universities across so many business and technology domains, with lots of really tangible examples, like everything from soccer to medical device development and machine translation, and also demonstrated all of the practical guidance supports available to take research through the spin out journey. That is, really, I think, could be quite daunting if you didn't have someone to sort of hold your hand through it and to help people sort of go through the customer needs and validating the business impacts, and that then actually finding industry partners to help with trials, and hopefully getting all the way through to the spin out journey, and actually getting out of the university. So it's really informative. Thank you very much. So we'll hand over now to Neil.
Well, thank you, Claire and Conor. Yes, so I'm the Startup Development Manager at Trinity. So I work across the whole university. I'm within an organization called Trinity Research and Innovation, and this is a unit, and their responsibility is to help researchers and staff within Trinity to translate their research outputs into something that's got an economic or a societal impact. It's not only about the money, it's also about making people's lives better. So our unit's got about 50 people in it, and it's led by Leonard Hobbs, and it's subdivided into 3 separate groups. We have a research development office, and it's their job to try and help researchers identify research funding sources, help them with the applications. We have a contracts office whose job is to make sure that these research funding contracts are sound and right, and also to help with contracts with industry collaborations. And then I work for a group called the Office for Corporate Partnership and Knowledge Exchange. And we're subdivided into 4 separate groups. And those groups are a technology transfer office, like you'd see in most universities. We have an industry team that engages with industry and creates industry partnerships. We have a group that looks after consultancy, in other words, helps researchers to use their research and knowledge and expertise to be able to carry out consultancy work. And then we have a group that's focused on startup development, so trying to ensure that the startups are created and high value startups are created. On the bottom right hand corner there in that hub and spoke, you can get a sense of the sort of outputs that we're measured on, and we're looking at things like the numbers of licenses that are output. We're looking at the numbers of patents that are approved. We're looking at the number of industry collaborations, and we're also looking at the number of spinouts. And to give you a sense of the amount of sort of output, this is a 5-year slot between 2013 2018, a little bit dated, but at least it gives you a kind of a sense of the measures that are important to us. We're looking at 581 collaboration agreements over that time frame. nearly 340 inventions disclosed, 134 licenses to industry, 56 patents granted. And I think in the last number of years, there's been a greater emphasis and a greater focus in terms of, right, how do we take these research outputs and make them valuable? How do we take these research outputs and turn them into something that's going to make a difference to people's lives? And that can happen in one of two ways. We can either take that technology, license it to industry, we can license it to a multinational, we could license it to an SME, or alternatively, what we could do is we could try and create a spin-out or try and create a startup company, which not only will create value, but it'll also create jobs going forward for the country and for the economy. I think it's important to kind of understand the tech transfer office's function within the university. And, you know, if you're a researcher, I mean, obviously, and with the work that Conor does with you to actually get access to research funding, there comes a time through that research funding project that you have to sort of figure out, okay, what is the kernel of the IP that we've created here? What have we done here? What is the value here that is created? And then what we do is we actually, it has to be evaluated. The technology has to be understood. We have to figure out how protectable it is. We have to figure out what the potential commercial opportunity is. We have to figure out, is there any challenges that we need to address? And then we have to figure out, we also take external expertise and knowledge in terms of figuring out how to protect it. So we work with patent attorneys and we work with intellectual property agents to figure out, okay, if there's something interesting here and something valuable here, what do we have to do to make it, to protect it and bring it forward and bring it to the outside world? As I mentioned earlier, there's typically two approaches in terms of commercialization of these research outputs. It can be licensed to industry, it can be licensed to a large company, or it could be spun out as a startup. But I think an important point here is that there is an element here of income sharing. And as a researcher, typically the way that the IP is actually captured could be through what's called an invention disclosure form, or typically in ADAPT's case, it would probably be a software disclosure form. And in that form, that helps us understand exactly what the IP is and where the IP is at. Also, what we do is we also, if you like, break out who are the people that have contributed to it, who are the people that have contributed to the development of this technology. And where income sharing comes in is that if you are a contributor to an invention, if you're a contributor to something that's going down the patenting route, well, when royalties are generated or when there's income generated for that, some of those royalties will flow back to yourself as an individual, okay? So that is why it's important to figure out who's done what, who's contributed to what, and where we go from here. And the two people that are important for you to be aware of, we have Dr. John Whelan, who is the ICT software technology transfer case manager, and we have Sam Williams, who is a dedicated licensing manager who focuses on those licenses, who focuses on what's contained in those licenses and make sure that everything's right and fair. We've had a good run of startups in the last number of years. So for example, in the last 5 years, we've had about 26 campus companies created. And I think there's a couple of things to kind of realize here. The first thing is that, you know, I work with projects across all areas, everything from life sciences to med tech to industry, industrial projects, physical sciences, and as well as ICT and software. And to give you kind of an example, I'm not going to go through every single one of them here, but I'll come back to Inflozome in a little while. But we've got Exora, for example, which is gene therapy for glaucoma. We've e-seed, which are fungal endophytes, which can be applied to seeds, and they can make crops increase their yield, and they can make them, they require less use of pesticides. In the med tech area, and I think what's also interesting is that, you know, sometimes these areas blend one into another. Like, you know, so for example, med tech crosses over into ICT and software quite a lot, and so therefore it's not as well defined as it perhaps was in the past. One project there, for example, has developed a solution for atrial fibrillation, and this is an affliction where, and it runs in families where electrical signals bounce around the heart wall. And one of the treatments is to put an incision into the heart wall, and that can control the signal and make people less vulnerable to strokes or heart disease. It's only successful in 50% of cases, but these guys are using AI and machine learning to basically identify what is the best location and where is the best incision depth to make sure that we get the best result possible. And they've actually raised 11.5 million, which is probably one of our largest raises. What we typically see is that ICT software companies can typically, you know, they can raise maybe somewhere between 500K and 2 million to give them that 18-month runway. The medical device projects, the life science projects need significantly more. And then also we have a nice group of ICT software spinouts as well. And Conor mentioned a few of them earlier on, and quite a number of these are actually adapt spinouts. They've raised significant money, and across all these companies, they've actually raised, separate to Inflozone, they've actually raised in excess of 80 million and have created nearly 300 jobs. Now, again, the other thing that we should say is that, obviously, industry is looking at what's coming out of the university. The university is deemed as a hotbed of good things happening and interesting ideas and good quality people coming out of it. And so, for example, we had Google snapping up some TCD technology a number of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, relating to virtual reality. The most recent high profile, which was one of the largest university spin-out acquisitions, was Inflozone, which is the inflammatory disease company with Luke O'Neill, and they were acquired for 380 million. So I'm not saying that every university spin-out is going to get into these kind of, heady levels of value, but at the same time, if you're continuing to create value and continue to do good stuff, then things can happen. We've had 5 new campus companies so far this year, and as I say, there's nearly 300 jobs created. But the reason we're able to do it is because we've very much focused upon, our world-class researchers. We've taken a lot of effort, invested a lot of time in terms of creating these high-quality teams that are well balanced. And then what we try to do is get them access to investment as early as possible. The spin-out process is I suppose the university spin-out process is a bit different to a conventional startup process, but there are a number of commons. So obviously you're somewhere within the research funding cycle. There comes a point where you have to figure out, okay, is this going to be a spin-out or is it not? There comes a time we have to figure out what is the team going to look like, and researchers probably have to make a decision, right? How involved do I want to be in this startup? Do I want to work on it full time? Or do I want to continue my research career in the university and perhaps work on it with 15-20% of my time? We have a lot of precedents, we have a lot of examples, and we're more than happy to try and help you make that decision, but ultimately it's your decision. But as Conor was saying earlier on, there has to be, prototyping and trials. As you're getting to a point through the research funding, you have to get to a point where you try to become investor ready. And the thing you can't forget about, and you always have to keep this in the back of your mind, the 4 M's of raising investment: the money, how much money do you need and what do you need it for? And when do you need it? The market, is it a big market? Is it a growing market? What's the management team look like? Has it got a good blend of commercial and technical people in it? And then the moat, how are you protecting it? What is making it different? What is making it unique? And if we have all those elements in place, then we can start engaging with the investor community. In Ireland, we have a fairly strong, growing, healthy investor network. And typically at earlier stages after the research, there are groups of angels and syndicates out there. These are formal angels and syndicates and formal networks. And then there's also informal ones as well, people that might be a little bit under the radar, under the surface. Enterprise Ireland will invest in your research, but they will also invest in you as a startup as well, contingent on you getting matching private investment. So if you're raising 600K and you're able to raise 300 private, Enterprise Ireland will match that 300 as well, to help you get to the next stage. And then at a little bit more advanced stage where there's a little bit less risk, there's a bit more money, then we've got PCs. The good thing is that we've got good relationships with lots of investors. We have lots of good relationships with lots of networks. We have the Atlantic Bridge University Fund, which was founded about 5 years ago, and that was a 60 million fund to focus on spinouts from the university system. And this was founded by Trinity and UCD, money from the European Investment Bank, AIB, Bank of Ireland. And it was quite unique and innovative in terms of what we did. Now it's actually got a second fund as well, and that's going to be worth 80 million, and that's just started off in the last number of weeks and months. Obviously, Enterprise Ireland, HBAN is the formal investor network, and then there's a number of other investors there as well. And some of them special, for example, Frontline specializes in SaaS businesses, Finch Capital specializes in fintech businesses. So our job is to, when we get to a stage where we're helping you to get investor ready and engage with the customers and engage with the market and try to find out what way you can take this further, we can introduce to these people. So the things that are really important are getting access to investors, one-to-one engagement to develop your investor readiness, getting access to trial partners and corporate partners, business partners, figuring out other commercial leads or professional CEOs who will work with you and take your company and work with your company and work with you to develop that company. And then the Trinity alumni, we've got access to the Trinity alumni as well. And to kind of give you an example, we have a project called Head Diagnostics, which is a medical device for detecting concussion. We brought them out to New York about 1.5 years ago, or 2 years ago, we'd be at this stage. And we bumped into a lawyer who was Trinity alumni, who was working for an organization who were representing 6 NFL franchises with their issues with that silent epidemic that's concussion with sports people. So that's the way that these networks and the way that these contacts can work. So just to finalize or to finish off, there's significant resources in place to help you spin out a company. We have a TT office that's very professional, very experienced. We've dedicated startup development expertise to help you do what you need to do. We've got people that could come in and join you as part of your team and be part of your team and work with you to develop your company. We've strong investor networks. And I think what's really interesting from our perspective is that, Adapt is very strong. Thanks to the great work from Conor and Declan and the team. We have a really strong pipeline of projects coming out of Adapt at the minute. And one of them, of course, being Darwin and Goliath and Eamon. So if you have any queries, anything you'd like to talk about, whether it's a walk in the park over a coffee or a chat or a Zoom call, I'm more than happy to have that conversation. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Neil. I think that really showed the bedrock of support that's available within universities to incubate and develop research for application in the wider world. And with that in mind, I'll hand over to Eamon Donlyn now, who can we can hear straight from the horse's mouth.
Well, thank you. And thanks to Neil and Conor as well, and to all of you for joining us this morning. Look, when we talk about, spinning a company out into a startup, there's a lot of the logistics that Conor and Neil have alluded to here, but there's still these foundational pieces that can lead to, the success of a project. And a lot of that foundation can be in research, right? And this is a good example, this project itself, that, kind of looked at the industry from a specific perspective, and really the research that was done early on was a machine learning project around algorithm selection. So recommendation engines in general have serviced the market in so many different ways over the last 20 years. So if we think about, kind of how recommendation engines have worked, and what they've kind of done for the industry, if you think about Netflix, or you think about Spotify or YouTube recommending videos and recommending different elements for you to view, or in Amazon's case, recommending, products for you to purchase. Recommendation engines themselves, are limiting beyond the big companies that can invest millions and millions and millions to evolve them over time. And so Dr. Yoram Beal and the team at Trinity did a great job of kind of looking at that challenge and saying, okay, well, how can we make these recommendation engines better? The specific technology itself, one algorithm, can be applied to different scenarios. And so how can we approve that? And how can we select different algorithms for different scenarios? And the group was lucky enough to be a finalist with NDRC, go through a business plan competition at the school, and get announced, as one of the finalists for that project, and gain a little bit of momentum in that regard, and then go on to a commercialization fund project through Enterprise Ireland, as mentioned previously on this webinar. So, the kind of combination was needed to say, okay, how do we turn this into something that we know for sure in market, we'll have enough value to spin it into a company. So it was originally tested with some industry partners in a couple of different verticals. And then myself and Stephen O'Connor were brought in to get it ready for kind of full operation and commercialization testing in the market. And of course, 1, 2, 3 individuals can only do so much. So we've been very lucky to find advisors both in the university and outside to help us grow the team a bit, so we have enough knowledge base to inform our decisions as we listen to the market. And team building is an important component of turning something from a research project into an industry innovation. And one of the first things you have to do, there's some simple basics, right? Beyond looking at business plans and listening very closely to the market, what are you presenting to the market? And, so the brand evolved from a kind of a simple concept, and even the brand imaging kind of evolves throughout that process, right? But, then you have to kind of get into the market itself. And, I say the word listening a lot because as much as you might think you have a good idea of what the market needs, really your job as a startup company or research project is to listen to, those industry partners. And, we start with grand ideas across all of those different industries we mentioned. I spent 12 years in media with Disney and other companies. So, there are applications beyond e-commerce that we could have applied to, but it really seemed like the most efficient use of the technology would be in the e-commerce space. And by testing in that space, narrowing our focus even down to Shopify to build out an environment that technically was feasible to test in a very rigorous manner made sense. And so we've had some great success with industry partners. We have over 20 companies that have been using our technology on this specific project, where we've increased their click-through rates and have now started increasing their revenues with this technology. And so we started with tons and tons of different potential partners and ended up listening closely to companies that are focused in the sustainability realm as well. And they had some unique challenges that were beyond some standard mainstream companies, which now kind of every company is starting to have to think about. So while they seem niche at the time, now it seems like every mainstream company also has to be thinking about sustainability. So some of the features and solutions we're developing around reviews and loyalty, which actually inform the product recommendations and improve the consumer experience in a couple of different facets, are factoring in those sustainability and carbon emissions concerns. And so by listening to the market and having the time in the commercialization fund to do that prior to becoming a company, we've explored some areas that we maybe wouldn't have had time to if we were a traditional startup that had raised capital right out of the gate. And so what do you get, right? You've seen everything from kind of the network already on this this call, but you get the credibility and the university network as well. Like, of course, our partners, we've talked to in the chain very closely, but then we're also we've been lucky enough to speak to professors at 4 or 5 different universities across the ecosystem about various different things, from supply chains to the business development to the business planning. And then of course the natural science realm and the eco elements around sustainability, things that we probably couldn't have explored in detail as much, were we not a part of this network. So the resources go beyond the obvious, and of course the investment ready support and the relationship with Enterprise Ireland and that cohesion with the Adapt Center has been very helpful. So it helps you save time and energy, and you're not thinking about some things because you have a lot to think about when you're trying to spin out a company, of course. And then the relationships with the market, right? Potential partners, introductions to investors and angel investors and VCs. So it really does enable our group to focus more on building the business and listening to the market than some of the logistics. So when you think about spinning out a company, it's kind of the same process. Even if you're spinning in an idea, you still have to analyze it in all the ways that Conor went through. But we feel very fortunate to be a part of the ecosystem, and we feel like it's really helped this project get to a point where it maybe could not have without this type of support. And so it's a good example of the potential for spinning something out of the university. Again, I'm Eamon. I'm happy to talk to anybody in the group, whether they're interested in developing an idea or industry partner that wants to understand the process as well. So feel free to find me on LinkedIn or reach out to us on email, and I'd be happy to have a chat with you guys as well. And thanks for joining us this morning.
Great, thanks very much, Eamon. I think that shows the real success story of Darwin and Goliath, and just the incubation within universities in general, and how it sort of provides sort of potentially more diverse resources versus the traditional startup path, and how that can lead to sort of real world impacts for businesses and success in the market. I'd like to thank all of our speakers today. I think it's given a really holistic overview of just all of the resources and diversity of talent and innovation that's within the university ecosystems there, and a real insight into how it all works and how it can really be a very fruitful sort of path for people. So I'd like to open it up to some questions now. So one question we got in early on would be if some of the panelists could provide some insights on evaluation criteria from investors for pre-seed or seed investment before your product is validated. So privately, like not applying for commercial funding via government bodies. Would that be?
Yeah, so I can answer that first, and then I'll let Neil and Eamon also. So I think it's so that pre-seed stage is difficult on seed stage, and I think it's still the same criteria that the startups have to do to get the commercialization fund. It is a difficult place where you don't have funds to create prototypes, but what you have is your time and your ability to go out and talk to the market, and that is the most important thing. You have to prioritize business validation over everything else. And if you can go out and talk to the market and validate the business case for it, that it saves money, it has efficiencies, it's going to open up new business models. What does that look like? What is the value proposition for it? How does it create value? If you can really articulate that well, you start to move into that pre-seed and seed stage. Also, can you get the buy-in? Can you get these industry partners that you talk to become trial partners? That is massive endorsement of what you're doing. If they will say, look, we totally get this problem. We've been trying to solve it. This innovation that you're exploring, if it can do those things that you say it can do, that would do all of these things for us. And because of those reasons, we would love to be a trial partner. If you can get them to say that stuff in a letter, it's massive endorsement of what you're trying to achieve. So I think it's a little bit difficult sometimes to kind of accept the fact that it is not about a big reveal. It's not about you creating something and then releasing it to the world. It has to be the other way around, where you go to the market, you understand what the value of it is, who your customers are, why they would pay for it, why they would value it, what are the benefits they would get from it. The more you understand that, the more you start to move to become investable. And some startups, based on the strength of the partners they have, the strength of the value proposition, including have all their ducks in a row, having their roadmap, their product development roadmap well defined, all of those things, if your ducks in a row, that you become extremely investable. If people can just look at it and go, this is going to work, given the buy-in from industry and the problem that it solves. So it's difficult to do all of that. But that is the challenge, I guess, and that is how you move yourself into being investable, even in the pre-seed and seed stages.
I think I would probably add to that as well. I think thinking earlier on about what this team is going to look like in front of investors is very important, and having the right mix of commercial and technical knowledge and technical expertise. I've brought companies in to meet investors, whether it's angels or VCs or syndicates, many times. And you can see it in their eyes straight away, whether they believe that this team is credible and can deliver what they say they're going to deliver. I think as a researcher, and again, I know there's a wide group of people that are on this call today, but if you are a researcher, I think you have to be prepared to share as well, and you have to be prepared to, I think, I don't want to be kind of black and white about it, but I mean, as a researcher with a great potential spin out, you are better having 50 or 60% or 30% or 40% of something that's really, really valuable, as opposed to 100% of something that's not very valuable. So what I would say is, at a very early stage, we're in research funding. Talk to Conor, talk to myself, talk to other people, talk to the network, and try and figure out who are the people that you want to have in and around this project that's helping you bring it forward. Like, you know, I think the other thing from an investor's point of view is they want to see the potential of a very large market as well. If you talk to VCs, they'll say, well, if it's a billion market, you know, it has to be at least a 1 billion market, like, you know, but that's the ideal, like, you know, but I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be. And I think that from our perspective, depending on how your investor ready package comes together and how you come together, we can sort of gradually bring you into the right investors and gradually bring you into the people in order to make you more confident, get an understanding of the questions they're asking you, the questions you have to field, and then put you in as strong and confident position as possible. And I think the other thing you should be aware of is when you are raising seed or pre-seed, you know, at least give yourself 6 months, maybe even 9 months if you're coming out of a research fund. You know, give yourself plenty of time to get into the investor networks, because they're not going to write a check straight away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, right? At this stage of the business, they're investing in the team just as much as anything else. And, you know, as Neil kind of detailed, but also as Conor was saying, the market validation point is that you can't always build everything the market wants immediately to test it. And in fact, you'd probably being a disservice to yourselves and the project if you built too much too early. One case in point on this project, we anticipated, right? You have your preconceived notions, you have your assumptions you're making. And we anticipated taking the recommendation engine and then doing loads of personalized marketing and integrating with, you know, MailChimp and these other kinds of services. But when listening to the market and looking at how saturated it is in certain elements, especially with how e-commerce is growing so rapidly now, almost everyone resoundingly of the 30 clients we've been talking to have asked for reviews and loyalty solutions to be adapted to kind of this new reality. And so, you know, we actually have adjusted the next layer of features beyond just the core recommendation engine according to the market. And that has nothing to do with what we've built. That has to do with all the conversations and customer discoveries. And we've re-interviewed our own customers multiple times, things that, you know, we do, like Conor says, just time. And so, you know, that is what sets the foundation for the investors to say, okay, well, you've actually listened to the market. You understand the problem in depth, not just sitting in a research lab. You've talked to people that, you know, that might pay for the service. And there's, you know, there's a lot of credibility that comes with that process.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about establishing sort of good habits, I suppose, as regards, apart from just good research habits, but good business habits as well. Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, I think we're just about at time. So I would like to thank all of you for attending and all of our panelists for contributing so much of their time and knowledge. Our next webinar will be focused on financial technology and will take place in early September. It will be advertised on our website at adaptcentre.ie and in our monthly newsletter. If you'd like to sign up, you can do so through the contact page on the website also. And a full recording of this webinar will also be available shortly on the Adapt Centre YouTube page. So I'd just like to thank our speakers again, and I look forward to welcoming you all back to our next webinar in September. Thank you very much.